Hey, nerd herders and green shirts alike, you are listening to Go Chuck Yourself. In this episode, Erin and I recap and analyze Season 2, Episode 3 of Chuck, entitled Chuck versus the Breakup. If you want, you can feel free to send us an email at gochuckyourselfpodcast@gmail.com. If you have any Chuck-related stories, questions, anything, we might give you a shout-out on air. We might read your email. If not, that's totally okay. It can just be between the three of us, or the two of us. I don't have to share the email with Erin, and she doesn't have to share the email with me. Anyhow, follow us on Twitter at GoChuckPodcast, and make sure to check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Write a review of our show. We'd really appreciate it, and we hope to see you next week. We post new episodes every Monday. So until then, here we go. Chuck Yourself listeners from around the world and throughout time. Hello, people in the future. It's hard to
past.
It's hard to and the past. If you're listening from the past, if you're moving, I guess, really fast and you're traveling through time and you're listening to Go Chuck Yourself, pretty crazy that if you're in the future, that Erin's the president now. But it's cool that this is a historical document outlining how Erin rose to power as a president,
journey.
As a nice president, like a benevolent one, not like a scary one. But
good. Thank you for clearing that up for me, Chris, because I wasn't sure which way I was going to go, but I'm glad to know that I am benevolent.
Benevolent, yes, using the power of love and uniting all peoples. Welcome friends and welcome family and welcome pets. Feel like we don't really talk it up to the pets listening to the show.
We don't. Yeah.
So
I think Templeton does.
Yeah, Templeton listens all the time, right? He's a big fan. I mean,
yeah, he's a big fan.
He only was like clawing at that scratching post that one time we were recording because he just wanted us to stop when we were balancing the microphone.
Well, now he doesn't live with me right now, so that's why you haven't heard him.
When you say it like that, it sounds like you're getting divorced from Templeton.
Templeton emancipated himself from me. He's on his own now.
Just like Aaron Carter?
Did Aaron Carter do that?
I think so.
That's cool. Good for him.
Anyhow,
I think he's racist now, though, so.
Oh, okay. Welcome to Go Chuck Yourself, where we talk about the television show Chuck, starring Zachary Levi and friends, a mere 11 years after it aired. My name is Chris Gillespie.
My name is future President Erin Arana.
Nice. Yes. Future President Erin Arana in here. Yeah, might as well just go for it. You know, dress for the job you want, not the job that you have.
Well, I'm currently wearing a blanket that you described as a frog blanket.
It looks like
it's like a blanket cape, and it has like a little hood that you can put on, and then there's little pom-pom ears on the hood. It's from Target. It's very good. It's made for children.
I think this is the second time you've talked about it.
I think you're right. I remember from season 1, but I just get this blanket from Target, everyone.
They're not advertising with us, so don't give Target free promotion on Go Chuck Yourself. This is sacred space. Yes, we're talking about episode 3 of season 2, Chuck versus the Breakup. And did I have a difficult time watching this episode, not because of the content of the episode, but because of my preferred way of viewing.
Okay, please elaborate.
So, listeners of the show know that I watch Chuck on DVDs. I have all the DVDs of Chuck, and I haven't gone through some of them. But this podcast is allowing me to have a reason to go through all my Chuck DVDs. So I put this DVD, the first disc of season 2, into my PlayStation, which is how I watch the episode sometimes, and go to the main menu, go to episode 3, and then it just nothing happened on the screen, and it was frozen, and the PlayStation was making like a doo 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 sound with the disc.
That's a good song, though.
I'm not gonna be able to watch this episode of Chuck.
That was good. That was
nice.
We have a future here.
So at that point, I take the disc out, put it back in, still nothing, and it's still. I'm like, is this gonna ruin my PlayStation by having this DVD in there? And mind you, I watched episode 1 and 2 on the DVD and it was fine, but episode 3 just not working. So I'm saying, well, maybe it's the PlayStation is doing something weird. So I go to my old friend VLC Media Player, hook up my external disc drive to my laptop, boot up the old traffic cone, as we VLC media player heads call it, us cone heads, and put in the DVD. And same thing, I go to the main menu and I go to episode 3, and then just nothing. Actually, it's important to note that
it doesn't exist.
At some point when I had it on my PlayStation, it did start working and it started jumping through different points of the episode. And then,
oh no.
So it got to the end and I was like, what? But at a certain point, it just froze on it, like a close-up of someone's eyeball. So I should have taken a picture of it, but I didn't because I was just so frustrated. But my entire television just had this one giant picture of someone's eyeball frozen on it. And I was like trying to use the controller to go to a different part and nothing was happening. And it was just frozen on this eyeball.
That's very intense.
And then, like I said, brought it to my laptop and my laptop just couldn't play it. But I could play episode 4 on the DVD. So next week I'm fine. But this one, I was like, what the hell? And I'm freaking out. I'm like, how am I going to watch this episode? We are going to be recording soon. I need to watch it and take notes. And then I was thinking, like, is Chuck on Amazon? Could I just buy an episode, like, a la carte, which I know you can do with some shows, but you can't do that. You need Prime.
Oh.
I don't have Prime. And then I was like, is Chuck on Netflix again? And it's not. But then I found that you can buy episodes a la carte on YouTube.
Yes.
Weirdly enough. So I ended up doing that. And then I made my life more complicated because I decided to log on to YouTube on the Roku that's on my television. And that was a whole thing because I don't know why I did that. I should just watch it on my computer. But
yeah,
that was my journey.
Of this, I'm sorry that this happened to you, and it shows real dedication to go check yourself. And then some of it is just seems to be you brought it on yourself.
I would say most of it is that I brought it up on myself. But yeah, that sounds about right.
Yep.
I feel like buying stuff on YouTube, their slogan should be like, well, you don't have a choice. You got to do this. Because
it's true.
I feel like the only time people like end up buying something on YouTube is when your other options run out and you're like, shit, I got to watch this thing and I have no choice. So you're like, sure, I'll pay $3 to watch it on YouTube.
I think you're right. I think that's a good slogan. YouTube, reach out to us for further marketing ideas.
Like if you're a professor in a class and you're watching some kind of documentary and it's not available, but it's on YouTube for some reason, and you're like, oh, we gotta play this, or you're hanging out with friends, you're like, oh, we should watch this thing, and you just can't find it anywhere. It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
Anywho,
in that moment.
I went through. I moved heaven and earth to get to this episode, Chuck versus the breakup.
Seems that you did. So why don't we start talking about it?
I would love to.
This episode is coming in hot with a very hot kiss between Sarah and Bryce, presumably in a flashback to the also very hot location of Bogota, Colombia.
More like Matt Bomer, am I right?
Okay, don't disrespect Matt in this way, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
So they're pretending to be a couple in love and or lust, and who could blame either of them? But we can tell from the way Bryce is looking around mid-kiss that they're on a mission.
More like Matt Bogota, am I right?
Isn't it Bogota, Chris? So they're waiting for some kind of security guards to pass by. Once the security guards do, they break apart and they start to move. Unfortunately, they're spotted by some more guards and a chase begins. I guess the guards want whatever is in the briefcase they have with them. I don't think we find out what it is, so don't worry about it.
I think it's baby Chuck.
Yes, I think it's his embryos, whatever. Bryce is caught and a gun is put to his head, but Sarah shoots the guard around Bryce, like right over Bryce's shoulder. She narrowly avoids shooting Bryce.
Mm-hmm.
They continue on their way, and Bryce gives Sarah a rose. Causing me to wonder, is this season just sponsored by roses? There's been a lot of roses in the past 3 episodes.
I get confused. Is this an episode of The Bachelor? I'm not sure. There's just a lot of roses and like
so many roses.
Chuck has a rose to give Sarah, but then he doesn't accept it, but then Sarah accepts Bryce's rose. Yep. So is this like a weird episode of The Bachelor where there's multiple bachelors?
Yeah.
I guess it's The Bachelorette, but the contestants hand out the roses to the person that's there. I'm not sure.
No, I think you're onto something there. Let's ABC get in contact with us as well.
All these open invitations.
So we move on to the scene. We get a repeat of the scene that we saw last week of Chuck in his white dinner jacket walking down the hallway. Sarah opens her door when he knocks, and we as the audience, I thought this was a really good acting on her part because, we see from her smile, she, lights up to see Chuck, but then there's, the complication of, Bryce is actually there. So I was taking it, we know that she loves him, but, Chuck, just zeroes in on Bryce. He isn't zeroing in on her face. He doesn't have this information.
More like Matt Bomer killer, am I right?
All right, that one I'll give you. Chuck returns home pretty much immediately, which leads me to wonder what exactly that conversation was when Chuck, like, when the door opened and Bryce was there. Like, why didn't he stick around to see, like, what his former best friend had been up to and, like, why he was there? Did he just, like, turn around and leave? Did Sarah ask him to leave? Like, I don't know what happened in this scene.
Especially since the last time that we saw Bryce, it was with the understanding that he was going deep undercover to fight
he's
Fulcrum.
Back. It's been like 6 episodes and he's back, baby.
Yeah, I thought he was, because they were making it seem like, well, he's gone. We're never going to see him because he has important work to do. But he's just like, yo, here I am.
He's back.
Yeah,
he's here. So Chuck heads back home and vents to Ellie and Devin about Sarah's ex being in town, reminding me that he can't tell them that Bryce is still alive, which I liked. I forgot that they didn't know that, and I thought that was like some interesting drama, and like doesn't really come up in this episode, but there are some kind of stakes, I guess, where like I don't like. Would Ellie recognize Bryce? I think
I don't know.
Implying, because like later in the episode, like she's gonna go talk to him, and then Devin does it instead, which I thought was clever. But now I'm thinking like I mean I don't have siblings, so they wouldn't recognize my college roommates. But like, would Molly recognize like your roommates?
I think so. I didn't realize. I completely forgot that Bryce is supposed to be dead.
Yeah.
So that's a good point. I'm not sure, but I guess Ellie's never up close to him.
Yeah.
But she's just like, hey, I think that's Sarah's ex.
But, like, Chuck later in the episode, like, when Ellie sees Bryce, Chuck seems, like, alarmed, and he's like, did you get a good look at him? And Ellie's like, no, and then Chuck, like, relaxes.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Like, but I don't know. I mean, I guess Chuck and Bryce were close. Maybe Bryce came over for Thanksgiving or something. You don't know.
Can I raise another concern that I just realized that has been in my brain this entire time, but I didn't realize it? How come we see Ellie and Awesome a lot of times when they're home after work because they're wearing their scrubs? How come they're never covered in blood or pus or feces or sweat or anything? They always look like supermodels. Because I know people that work at hospitals and they get drenched in just the grossest stuff. They don't come home and just like, oh, let's kick up, let's put our feet up and have glasses of wine.
Yeah, that's actually, I'm thinking about it. It's pretty gross that they're like wearing those like just around their house.
So there's that concern. But then I'm also thinking, well, maybe I need to think outside the box here. Maybe they're so clean because they're getting ready for their shift because they have, they work at a hospital and they have weird shifts. But then that raises the concern that they're drinking wine before they go to work at a hospital. I think that's the most likely conclusion. We were talking about Montgomery being an alcoholic in the last episode, but maybe we got to take a look at Ellie and Awesome.
I think we do.
I'm going to sue them for malpractice.
In this specific scene, they're supportive of Chuck and say that the ex will be out of his life in no time. Chuck has a line here where he says he refers to himself as alone, not technically, but emotionally. And that hit home for me. That was a very Erin errata line.
Did he look into the camera and wink and say, that one's for you, Erin?
Yeah, he did, actually. It was really nice. It was a nice moment.
Good.
So we move on to the Bymore. Apparently Lester hasn't learned his lesson because he's still a tyrant the next time we see him. He tells Morgan to go into the home theater room and kick out the employees of some kind of sports store that's in that plaza or something. I wasn't really clear on who these guys were, but they're all wearing like matching t-shirts. So I think they work at a sports store and they're there on their break. Their break seems to last a very long time, but they're in there.
Could have been the end of the shift. The store was called Mighty Jocks, like the play on the Mighty Ducks.
Okay. There you go. Thanks. Chris is the sports expert this episode, and we'll get into that in a second, but these are some super big dudes. They're playing Madden. Everyone is afraid to interrupt them, and I sure hope they don't accidentally trigger the nuclear deployment method that's up in that TV. So Morgan goes in to talk to the guys, and their leader is someone named Mitt, who Chris is going to pop in to tell you more.
He's played by Michael Strahan, who is, of course, the former football star and current ABC daytime television darling. I wasn't paying attention to his name. I was just thinking to myself, oh, that's Michael Strahan that entire time. So I will be referring to him as Michael Strahan. He's playing a character, so I know he's a nice guy and he's not like a mean bully like he is in the show, but it's Michael Strahan.
Yeah. So his name is Mitt in the show. I did not know. I recognized him. I was like, that guy looks like a football player, but I needed Chris to give me more information. But anyway, he shoves his burrito into Morgan's pants pocket, and threatens him if he ever interrupts one of their games again. So Morgan runs out with his tail between his legs.
Disrespecting Morgan just like Michael Strahan disrespected Kelly Ripa and the institution that is live with Kelly Ripa.
Kelly Ripa is married to someone who's on Riverdale.
So what I just said had almost no effect on you, so I'm assuming that you probably don't know what happened with Michael Strahan and live with Kelly Ripa.
No, I have no idea. Please tell me more.
It was like I said it to a wall.
You said Kelly Ripa, and then I was like Riverdale, and then I just like went on a journey.
Well, come back so I can talk to you about Michael Strahan.
I returned.
So, do you know he was the co-host with Kelly Ripa on Live?
Oh, that was him?
Yeah. He did that for a couple of years, and they had, good chemistry and everything like that. And then all of a sudden, he just wasn't on Kelly Ripa anymore. He just wasn't the co-host. And he announced that he was quitting, and that day he was done. And it was this whole thing because it made Kelly Ripa look bad, and she didn't have another host lined up. And then he started with Good Morning America, and now he has his own daytime thing with Good Morning America. But it all worked out okay because now Kelly has Ryan Seacrest, and they're a match made.
She used to host with Regis, right?
Right. It started with Regis.
Is Regis alive?
Yeah, he's still alive. As of this recording, okay. I don't know.
Okay, oh God.
I don't know when this episode's going to come out, but as of this very moment, he is.
Regis, stay with us.
All right. So besides my Michael Strahan feelings, what's going on in the Chuck universe?
Meanwhile, in Castle, Beckman tells Casey, Sarah, and Chuck that the Fulcrum threat is worse than it initially appeared, and an update to the Intersect has been stolen, which has information on it about their covers. So they got to get that back, or else they're, in danger.
Mm-hmm.
They have to go to a man called Von Hayes' fancy party to get the update back. I don't know why Beckman phrases it this way, but she says, "I want you to pose as a married couple." And Chuck, who is in the room, very reasonably thinks she's referring to him because he's in the room and she's looking at him. But she responds with, "No, Chuck, this mission requires a real spy." And then Bryce, who had not been in the room and was actually upstairs in the refrigerator, enters in a cloud of steam and is like, "Yeah, I'm here for my part in the mission." So I don't know why Beckman phrased it that way.
Wearing sunglasses too. And I realized that I have, I guess, this fantasy where we stopped doing this show, but like Kelly Ripa, you continue. I'm the Michael Strahan and you're the Kelly Ripa in this situation.
Okay.
I leave the show. And it ruins our friendship and it's bad. And
I'm glad you have that fantasy.
You continue to do the show, but you find a new co-host, and then someone says "Oh, well, we need a real co-host for this episode," and then I walk in with sunglasses. And they're like, "Wow, now there's a co-host for a podcast." And then I walk down.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good fantasy, actually.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
So we'll work on it.
I have a question here. I do actually have not the segment interesting information, but I do have some interesting information to get into later. But I was commenting on the names in Chuck because we had a Lon last season, and now we have a Vaughn.
Yeah. Wait, what was the other guy?
Lon.
That's right. Okay. Yeah. I thought it was the same guy first. I was like, wait a second, not the same guy.
Yeah, I thought that too, because their names rhyme. Vaughn's is a grocery chain in LA, so I was thinking that they named him after that, but in fact I learned some information that we'll get into later about why his name is Von Hayes.
All right.
But that's not happening. Speaking of names, something that I like in this episode is that Sarah finally has a cover name. It's Mrs. Anderson. Bryce puts a ring on her and refers to her as Mrs. Anderson. He's Mr. Anderson. I don't think that's a Matrix reference, but when somebody says Mr. Anderson, I mean, that's where your brain goes, right? Chuck wants to know more about the mission and specifically what Bryce and Sarah will be getting up to together, so he appeals to Casey's pride by telling Casey he's the master, which of course it's true, he is the master. Casey tells Chuck that Bryce and Sarah will be getting hot and heavy with the PDA so as not to arouse suspicion at the party as they search the mansion where it's being held. Meanwhile, Bryce flirts with Sarah in the orange, and she tells him she wants to keep things professional. So that's a good sign for us, wanting her to be with Chuck. She's not receptive to Bryce's advances. Unfortunately, Ellie stops by the orange and sees them holding hands. Oh no! Chuck and Morgan are in the Buy More. They talk about their respective insecurities and how they have something that Bryce and Mitt don't, which is brains. Unfortunately, I think this is not true because Bryce is a CIA operative, so he does have brains, and Chuck is using empty comfort. Ellie arrives in the store to tell Chuck what she saw in the orange. We find out she was there to ask Sarah to be a bridesmaid in her wedding, which I thought was very, very sweet, But then I started wondering, like, why didn't Ellie just text Chuck and say, like, hey, when's the next time you and Sarah will be at my apartment? And also, like, we find out Chuck is about to leave to go home. Like, I don't know why you would walk into someone's work and say, like, I think your girlfriend is cheating on you. Like, she should have just waited, because you don't want Chuck to be at work and, like, dealing with that stress. Like, that's tough. That's, like, a heavy thing. I think Ellie needs to respect that people are in their places of employment, and she should just broach unrelated topics, like topics unrelated to work, later, when they're in their places of leisure.
Are you trying to tell me that I text you too often while you're supposed to be working? Is that what this is all about?
I don't like that you phrase it as supposed to be working, because, Chris, I am working.
I was hoping that Ellie was going to come in and say, hey, I was at the Orange because I wanted to invite Sarah to be one of my bridesmaids, and I saw her talking to this guy, so I guess I have to invite that guy to the wedding now, and you can't be one of Awesome's groomsmen, so I'm sorry, but you're not invited to our wedding anymore.
I would have liked that moment. So the sports guys are still up in the home theater room being loud, so Morgan and Lester come up with a plan to turn off the power to the room. They do this right as Mitt is about to make a game-winning touchdown, so he gets very mad and says he's going to beat them up after work.
He also lifts Morgan into the air.
Oh yeah, I kind of like when people lift Morgan. Like, it's kind of, I wouldn't say, like, it's a sex thing, but, like, I like looking at
it. Do you think, I couldn't tell if he was just doing it naturally, or they must have had wires connected to Morgan, right? Because he was lifting him.
I don't know, I mean, he's a strong guy.
Yeah, but would you be able to lift Morgan up by the neck? Was he holding by the neck, or was he? It must have been the neck, because otherwise it would have had to be under the arms. It would be like the Lion King, or like you're holding a baby.
I think if you're lifting someone by the neck, you probably have to have wires just for, like, safety.
Well, Michael Strahan didn't think about safety when he just left Kelly Ripa hanging. Just dangling in the air. Sarah and Casey wouldn't have done that to their spy partners, but Michael Strahan did to Kelly Ripa.
Yep, that's true. My next note that I have is I hate how everyone gels their hair in this show. I think I spoke a little bit about that in our last episode, but, like, it's heavy, this, like, much like their hair, the amount of gel. No, this isn't working, but I'm just gonna stick with it. I do not like the gel in this show. Chris is displaying some gel. No, like, your hair looks fine. Like, if you put, like, a little bit in it, but I don't know if it's, like, a 2000s thing or if it's, like, a spy thing or whatever, but, like, Matt Bomer and Zachary Levi have nice hair, and they're just, like, slicking it back. It looks weird. I'd rather it be, like, in, like, little, like, Justin Timberlake points.
Like the curly Justin Timberlake? Like in sync Justin Timberlake?
I don't know. I mean, I'd rather just them have their hair.
The cringy noodle haircuts?
Yes, that's what I want everyone in the show Chuck to have. So Chuck arrives at Sarah's apartment to finish getting ready. I don't really know. I don't understand this. But
have
Bryce
you ever gone to prom, Erin? Don't you know that you need to get ready in stages at different people's houses?
I know girls do this. I didn't know, like, men do this. Do they? Do you do this?
Yeah, if you're getting ready to go undercover as a waiter, of course you're going to go check up on your buddies and just sync up.
So he goes to Sarah's apartment and Bryce is there, and Bryce and Chuck get ready together. Chuck questions Bryce about staying with Sarah, and Bryce says he's just there protecting their cover. I don't really think that these people know what that phrase means, because if he is indeed protecting their cover by being there, then, like, Chuck being there is, like, ruining their cover. So Chuck should not be there. I don't think this makes sense. But, you know, Bryce is there. They're having some banter. Bryce cautions Chuck against falling for Sarah, and Chuck assures Bryce that he hasn't. Sarah enters in a beautiful red dress. She looks really nice. She has her hair pulled back. I thought she looked good.
Mm-hmm.
And Chuck says she looks good, but red's not his color. And then he just, like, leaves. And Bryce looks between the two of them, and he's like, But it's kind of like he's a little bit worried, so it's more like, And
then Chuck comes back in and he says, or salmon, or whatever color that is.
Yeah. I think it was just red. It was red.
It was a little salmon-y looking. Right.
You have salmon pants, right? Is that you?
I used to.
Oh.
Yeah.
Not feeling it anymore?
No, they got destroyed destroyed's a little harsh, but I was eating a breakfast sandwich, and whatever grease was on the breakfast sandwich from this supposedly, like, healthy, cool breakfast sandwich place, like, stained my pants permanently. Can't come out, so I had to get rid of them.
Too bad, you had to get rid of the salmon pants.
Yep.
So they arrive at the party, hosted by Von Hayes in his mansion. I thought Von Hayes was Academy Award nominee Richard E. Grant, and I was very disappointed when he was not. He's like a British guy with long hair. Chuck pretends to be a waiter while hoping to flash on Vaughn or like someone else at the party, but unfortunately, he's pretty distracted by Bryce and Sarah dancing together and being very affectionate towards each other. We get some fun banter between Bryce and Sarah while they're dancing, where he asks her to let him lead, and she says no. I wasn't sure what that represented, but I did like it. Meanwhile, at Vaughn's table, Chuck spills wine all over Vaughn because he's too busy looking at Sarah. Chuck bonds with another waiter, which was another weird but good moment, over how weird it is watching these people who are like basically having sex on the dance floor. Bryce and Sarah begin making out, and Chuck drops a bottle of champagne, which results in him being fired. Also, his cover name is Jorge, which, like, I don't know, it's fine.
He's not Charles Carmichael this time around. He's Jorge Carmichael.
Yeah, good name. Good name.
Can I just say, like, why do you, if you're a millionaire or a magnate or whoever, and you are doing some kind of illicit thing with the government where you have to do a trade-off or you have something that they're trying to pick up or what have you, why do they throw parties during that time when you have the thing? Like, wouldn't you just, I would say, I have to do this trade-off. I'm going to lay low for a while. I'm not going to invite a bunch of strangers to my house to either take it out of my pocket or break into my vault or just get any information about me. I'm going to be as anonymous as possible until the thing is done and then have a party. Like, why have a party in the middle of when you're trying to do this thing?
Well, you seemed very on board when they had the trade-off in the Buy More on Black Friday because no one would notice. So I think that's the principle that they're working on. And also, it's just, like, funner to watch.
I guess so, but if you're just, like, why would you host people if you're trying to conceal something like that? Just don't take any risks. I don't know. So at the party, Jorge, or as I call him, Chuck, is getting in trouble because he broke that bottle of fancy champagne. Hayes comes over and says, do you know what that was? That was $1,000 bottle of some kind of fancy white wine or champagne.
Nice.
Which, once again, you know, Hayes, if you're really as rich as you say you are, why are you so concerned about $1,000 bottle of champagne?
But it's irreplaceable, Chris.
But he has presumably a lot of them, or equivalents of it. Why would he care?
I know, but I mean, it's kind of the same thing if, like, you were an employee, like, if Chuck was at the Buy More and he, like, smashed up a computer, I think his boss would be mad. Like, even though the Buy More owner probably has a bunch of computers, like, he's doing a bad job at his job.
You heard it here first, everyone. President Erin is against the working class.
Oh, no.
So anyhow, Jorge gets fired. And he has to pretend to be upset, so he's following his catering supervisor out, but he's caught off guard when he flashes on a woman who is speaking to Hayes about the microchip. Turns out she's a Fulcrum agent.
Yeah, he flashes on her voice.
Yeah, that was weird.
That was weird.
I'm glad that they kind of play with the idea of that whenever Chuck is working undercover as a waiter, he has to have a fake name, and that he presumably has a undercover supervisor, not someone that's undercover, but like his alias
like
needs
he's been hired.
Yeah, like a supervisor needs to know that Jorge is covering the champagne duty or what have you.
Yeah, I thought that the man was going to be like, oh, I've never seen that man in my life. Like, and then, but apparently he was hired and the supervisor knows who he is.
Yeah. So, I was thinking a lot about that, but I was like, whatever.
Some world building. I had two notes here that I just want to bring up. First of all, Amazon subtitles capitalize Fulcrum like it's an acronym,
okay,
which I did not think it was an acronym. I thought it was just a word. Fun fact. Also, when they go outside at this party, there's some shitty cars. Like, for this really fancy party, there's some Priuses, there's, like, some Volkswagens. Like, I would think that this fancy party, like, people are driving in style, but apparently not.
Once again, everyone, President Erin is an elitist.
Well, now I'm thinking about it. Maybe those were the employees' cars? But why were they parked at the house? I don't know. I have a lot of questions about these cars.
Meanwhile, back at the Buy More, Morgan and Lester are afraid to leave the store because Michael Strahan promised to beat them up as soon as they left the Buy More. Morgan tries to be brave, but as soon as he reaches the door, he and Lester chicken out, and Anna and Jeff leave the store without them. So then back at the mansion, Chuck gets locked out of the mansion and tells Casey that he didn't get a chance to see the woman's face, he only heard her voice. Chuck sneaks back into the mansion after Casey hacks the security system and hides underneath a table in a smaller dining room. Incidentally, Hayes and the Fulcrum agent enter the dining room around the same time to talk about exchanging the microchip. Hayes is looking for his payment before he hands over the chip. His payment is $15 million. However, the Fulcrum agent shoots Hayes' bodyguard and points her gun at Hayes and announces that she will not be paying for the chip, presumably because she will shoot him if he does not hand over the chip.
I think that's rude of her. They made a deal. She should stick to it.
Definitely.
That's my promise as president. Everybody sticks to their deals. No changing your mind.
I guess I think that's bad. Like, you're saying don't change or don't grow or educate yourself.
Okay. I take it back.
Is Erin a bad president in the future? Are you listening
You
to this
said
episode?
I was benevolent.
I thought so.
I thought I could do no wrong.
Maybe like the rebellion is listening to this to try to figure out your weak points. And Lord knows you have divulged quite a few weak points in the recording of the show.
One of them is milk.
Anyhow, Hayes tells her, the Fulcrum agent that is, that the chip is in his vault while taking out his keys to the vault. He drops the keys on the floor because he's nervous, and Chuck flashes on his keychain. Turns out the keychain is the microchip, and that has all of the information about Sarah and Casey and Bryce and everyone else, and their covers on it. Hayes leads the Fulcrum agent out of the dining room and to the vault. Chuck reports this back to Casey and spends a lot of time detailing how scary and strange looking the Fulcrum agent is. Which I didn't think she was that weird looking.
That was rude.
Yeah, it was kind of strange.
No, she doesn't really look weird at all.
Hey, I just saw the Fulcrum agent and she's like a hard 4.
I mean, I was glad she wasn't like actually weird looking and that they commented on it. Like, I was glad it was like a normal person. But
Yeah.
it was also just weird. Like, I feel like he could have said anything at this. Like, he could have said, I don't know. I mean, if the joke was that like he insulted her, he could have said like, wow, she was really mean. I don't know, maybe it doesn't have the same ring to it.
Hey, you're so mean. Anyhow,
you gotta be so mean.
the Fulcrum agent hears Chuck talking smack about her, and she sticks her silence pistol underneath the tablecloth, and she, has just heard everything that Chuck said, and she wants Chuck to go with her. Elsewhere, Bryce and Sarah make their way through the mansion looking for Hayes. Bryce and Sarah find Hayes, but the Fulcrum agent takes Chuck out the opposite door. Bryce says that they should go chase Hayes and get the chip, but Sarah says that they need to save Chuck. Bryce contends that the microchip is more important because they will all die if their covers are compromised, but Sarah disagrees with him and chases after Chuck and the Fulcrum agent. So they head in opposite directions. Hayes makes for his flashy yellow sports car, which is a Lamborghini, in the valet area, and he drives off, almost running over Bryce. Sarah gets into a gunfight with the Fulcrum agent, but the agent retreats into a black Mercedes that speeds up, so she jumps in the back seat, drives off, but not before she drops what appears to be a grenade out of the car window.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Chuck and Sarah hear and then eventually see the grenade right before it's going to explode, so they jump for cover behind a car. The grenade blows up a nearby car in what is a much more dramatic explosion than the time that missile blew up the Crown Vic.
Yeah, that's also true.
I was like, oh shit, that car just blew up, but with the Crown Vic, it was like, oh, they blew out the windows. Chuck looks at the explosion and is like, wow, holy shit. And then he turns to Sarah, and Sarah's unconscious on the ground with bruises all over.
Oh my god. Yeah, that was very stressful.
Now, this is where we would have had a very suspenseful commercial break, but since we're streaming and commercials don't exist, we cut right back to Chuck, and he's visiting Sarah, who is safely recovering in the hospital.
Yeah, she's fine.
She's good.
She's got a concussion.
Just like Michael Strahan's friends, probably.
Oh no!
Chuck brings Sarah a small bouquet of flowers, gardenias, her favorite. And she says that he can put them right next to the rest of her flowers. Chuck turns and sees a figurative mountain of various colorful flowers that Bryce sent to her.
Too many flowers, I would say.
Chuck bemoans the fact that he'll always come in second to Bryce, but Sarah says, not always.
You sounded a little British there.
Hello.
You sound like a little British child.
Hello, please, sir. Can I have some more flowers? Out in the hospital hallway, Bryce stands around looking sketchy and catches the eye of Ellie and Awesome, who work at this hospital because they're doctors, even if they don't have the stains or sweat to prove it. Ellie sees Bryce, doesn't really recognize that it's Bryce, her brother's former, currently dead roommate.
He's like Captain America and Winter Soldier. He's like disguised heavily. He's got like a hat and a hoodie and like a jacket.
Yeah, I mean, those people in the MCU put a jacket and a hat on them. I'm like, whoa, weird Captain America.
Like,
oh, wait, that was Captain America?
Oh, shit.
Captain America doesn't have sunglasses and a baseball hat. Ellie sees Bryce and decides that she's going to go confront him on Chuck's behalf, but Awesome says that he's going to take care of it.
I thought that was kind of clever. Like, if we're taking it to be that like Ellie would recognize Bryce, I thought it was pretty clever because like Devin obviously wouldn't. So I thought it was clever that he's the one like that there. But I don't know what's gonna happen. Like, I don't know what the stakes are if Ellie realizes that it's Bryce. Like, I mean, I guess that Chuck would have to explain like why Bryce isn't dead, and then it might bring up questions about his spy life. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it seems like they're making a big deal out of it.
I had a question. Do Ellie and Awesome know that Chuck and Sarah are in the hospital? Because at no point do they stop by and visit Sarah.
Well, they know Sarah's there because they know that he's bringing her flowers, and they know that he's there because Sarah's there. So I don't know if they know that Chuck is present, but they know that Sarah's in that room because why else would Bryce be there?
True. Well, he could have just been there for unrelated reasons.
No, they definitely, because later Devin intercepts roses or flowers or something for Sarah.
Yep.
And he thinks they're from Bryce. So I think they know. But maybe they just already visited her.
Sarah and Chuck share a nice moment where they joke about Chuck's inability to protect Sarah from all the spy threats that she faces. Awesome, meanwhile, goes up to Bryce and notices that he has an infected cut on his cheek from the night before. So he uses it and his medical training as an excuse to take Bryce to an examination room for some one-on-one time. He cleans out the cut with disinfectant, stings a little bit. And
this was like pretty wimpy during this scene.
Well, I mean, I'd feel wimpy if I was with Awesome.
That's true, but he's Matt Bomer.
Yeah, but I mean, I think we can agree that this is the most handsome scene to date in the history of Chuck.
Yes, we can absolutely agree.
Just Bryce and Awesome.
Bryce's cut. Even like Bryce's cut maybe makes him better. He looks a little rugged.
Ooh. Erin likes the emo boys.
What about me has led you to believe that that is not the case? Where have I gone wrong?
Yeah, I guess now that you mentioned it, you did introduce yourself and said, "Hi, my name is Erin. I like emo boys."
Yeah, that's exactly how I met you.
Awesome points out that it seems like Bryce still has feelings for Sarah based on the amount of flowers that he gave her, and Bryce says, "Let's say it together, it's complicated." When Awesome mentions that Sarah was dating his soon-to-be brother-in-law, Bryce pretends not to know this, and he inquires more about their relationship. Awesome says that he specializes in cardiovascular medicine, so there's one thing that he knows about: the human heart.
Aww. Yeah, that's pretty nice.
Except for that time in the last episode when he took Morgan's advice for seducing Ellie and was completely...
they're playing it fast and loose with Devin's knowledge here. But, whatever. He's a heart doctor.
Awesome says that based on the way that Sarah looks at Chuck, in his professional opinion, she's in love with Chuck, and this gives Bryce pause.
I am always so happy when I think about how they were going to make Awesome a Russian spy, and then, he's not. Every time he does something, I'm just like, I'm so glad he's not a spy.
Back at the Bymore, Morgan and Lester are exhausted and disheveled because they slept at the store overnight because they were afraid to go outside because of Michael Strahan.
Why didn't they just go sleep in the massage chairs or something, or the home theater room? I'm sure there's comfortable places. They didn't have to sleep on the desk.
The home theater room probably smells like BO because all the jocks are hanging out in there.
That's fair, and they don't clean it up. They don't clean up the food after themselves.
So that same morning, Michael Strahan and his entourage enter the Bymore to confront Morgan, and Morgan decides to be brave and stand up to him. Morgan asks Michael Strahan if they could settle this without Morgan getting beaten up, and Michael Strahan says that he and his friends could all use new PSPs, which Morgan agrees to provide, even if it means taking 2 weeks advance pay. Holy shit, he's buying PSPs for all of these guys, and also, isn't that extortion or blackmail? They're saying that they'll physically harm Morgan if they don't get these expensive new gaming systems.
Yeah, he should go to the cops.
Morgan does not go to the police or the spies that work in his store who also work in law enforcement. Instead, he decides to buy the PSPs, and he goes back to Anna and the rest of the nerd herd and pretends like he defended himself and scared Michael Strahan and his crew off. At the apartment complex, Bryce shows up to talk to Chuck and says that he's concerned about Sarah. Chuck's not really interested in hearing Bryce, but Bryce presents the point that Sarah went off mission by not following Hayes at the mansion and almost got both herself and Chuck killed in the process. Bryce is concerned because, well, Sarah has feelings for Chuck!
That was a nice voice.
And not only that, but feelings will get her killed!
Are you doing an impression of Matt Bomer?
Hey, I'm Matt Bomer!
I'm the star of Suits!
Go suit yourself! No, I just wrote it all in caps, so I'm just being true to my notes. Anything less than matching Fulcrum's ruthlessness, Bryce says, will get them all killed. Back at the hospital, Sarah doesn't give a shit, just taking a nap in the hospital. And the Fulcrum agent that we saw earlier, her driver or bodyguard or just friend or coworker,
just someone she's close to.
He was driving the Mercedes earlier. He appears at the hospital and asks for Sarah Walker's room, and the nurse just tells him where it is.
Yeah, apparently Sarah's, I guess all the flowers, maybe the delivery people for the flowers just kept asking, where's Sarah Walker's room? So she just assumes.
Maybe. I was just thinking it wasn't really safe. I don't know if you ever visited a hospital, but you could tell certain people that you don't want people allowed to come visit you at the hospital.
Yeah,
There
and I
should
mean,
be
I
a
guess like she's sleeping from a concussion. She's recovering. Like, is it during visiting hours? Like, what's the deal here? They didn't even ask who that guy was or how he was related to her.
yeah, and the nurse is just like, whatever, go for it.
The
Doesn't
nurse
check his
don't give a
ID.
shit.
No, she doesn't. And they leave a doctor's coat just out in the open, so the henchman takes it and puts on the doctor's coat to pretend to be a doctor.
Yeah, he does.
Back at the apartment, Awesome gives Chuck a bouquet of flowers, and Chuck is kind of taken aback because he's never received a bouquet of flowers ever, let alone from another man. Awesome says that the flowers are not from Awesome, that he just intercepted them from Bryce, who sent them to Sarah's room. Chuck notices a note in the bouquet that says, "Let's meet in private," and has a phone number. So Chuck thinks that this is Bryce's phone number, so he calls it, and then Hayes answers the phone, confused as to how Jorge the waiter got his personal cell phone number. Hayes says that he sent the flowers to the female agent, i.e. Sarah, and Chuck bluffs and says that he is Sarah's supervisor and that Hayes' case got pushed up the pipeline, so now Jorge Carmichael is handling it. Hayes agrees to work with Chuck. He says that he'll help Chuck find the chip as long as Chuck's team can protect him from Fulcrum. Hayes is stressed out because he was sleeping in his Lamborghini overnight. Lamborghini is apparently not very comfortable. Chuck finds Casey at the Buy More to fill him in on what's going on with Hayes. Chuck says that Hayes has agreed to hand over the chip under the following conditions. 1, Hayes will only give the chip to Chuck. 2, Hayes wants full immunity from any government prosecution, assuming that he goes along with everything they're doing. Casey's fine with this, but Chuck has the third requirement, which is that they need $4.5 million in unmarked small bills to give to Hayes. Meanwhile, at the hospital, the Fulcrum henchman posing as Sarah's doctor enters and tells her that she should be released in a few hours, and then he takes out this ominous-looking needle. Sarah notices that the doctor's face does not match the ID badge on the lab coat, so she puts him in a chokehold and demands to know where his boss is.
That was like good on her. I was proud of her for handling that situation.
Casey, Bryce, and Chuck show up at what I'm assuming is the swankiest train and or bus station I've ever seen.
I think that's Union. I thought it was Union Station, but I'm not sure because I haven't been there.
Because all the chairs like in the waiting area are these really nice wooden plush armchairs.
It was very old-fashioned looking.
It was
and
very nice.
I didn't think it had a lot of space. Like I didn't think it could hold a lot of people for a train station, but that's where like the Amtraks are because we see an Amtrak later.
Yeah. Huh. I'll have to check it out sometime.
Yeah, we'll have to do some research.
But they're here to meet Hayes and trade the duffel bag of money for the chip. Hayes wanders in wearing his white tuxedo and definitely looking out of place and stressed out. He meets up with Chuck, who is carrying the giant duffel bag, and the two loudly talk about how they're not used to spy exchanges, so they don't know the protocol. So much for using a public space for discretion.
Yep.
As this is happening, the only people who are apparently awake and notice this going down are undercover Fulcrum proxies. They see Hayes and start to run for him. Seeing this, Hayes runs away, shouting that he thought he could trust Chuck. Casey is pissed that now he has to run and take matters into his own hands. No one else seems to be particularly concerned about the men running through the train station, chasing a lanky British man in a white tuxedo. Everyone's just like, yeah.
I mean, have you ever been to Port Authority? I feel like that's a regular occurrence there.
I've been to Port Authority, but I would be a little perturbed or concerned if I saw a man in a white tuxedo running away from a bunch of other guys. Here in New York, we have a saying, Erin, see something, say something. New York City.
Yes, that is New York City's motto. Little known fact. So Casey runs after Vaughn and the bad guys, but the bad guys get to Vaughn first. There's a standoff on the train platform, which Chuck ends by showing up with his big bag of money and offering to give it to the bad guys in exchange for them letting everyone go. So that's, I don't know if it's quick thinking, but it's like a good exchange.
Pretty pragmatic, yeah.
Yeah, the bad guys elect to take the money, and Vaughn hugs Chuck. He's apparently no longer into getting money for the microchip because I guess his life has been threatened twice, so he just hands the microchip right over. As they're leaving the station, though, the Fulcrum agent, like the woman who Chuck insulted earlier, shows up and puts a gun to Chuck's head. She has a standoff holding the gun to Chuck's head with Bryce and says that if Bryce gives her the microchip, she'll let Chuck go. Bryce sees Sarah creeping around the corner, so he puts his gun down and slides it to the agent and then gives her the chip as well, thinking that Sarah will take the shot around Chuck like she did in the flashback earlier. But, oh my god, Sarah can't do it. She's too afraid of shooting Chuck by accident, so she can't take the shot.
She's getting soft. Soft like pudding.
Fortunately, Casey has caught Vaughn, and he's coming in from behind, so he shoots the fulcrum agent in the shoulder. She falls, and Chuck is free. Sarah, because she couldn't take the shot, begins having a crisis. Back in the Bybor, the sports guys are back for more Madden, even after Morgan's little stunt. Lester and the others ask Morgan to go in and confront them, so Morgan does. He tells them he thought they had an understanding, but pretty predictably, Mitt says he now wants a PS3. They could have bought mine. I would have sold mine to them. They're just a couple months too late. Anna tells the guys they can't talk to Morgan like that, and I really wanted her to like beat the shit out of them herself right here, but all we really get at this point is that Morgan seems incapable of standing up for his girlfriend until he pours a can of grape soda all over Mitt's head. The natural sequence of events here is that they lock Mitt and Morgan in the cage together. That's just seems the right thing for them to do.
An event to which both of them seem to be consenting to. Like, they're not trying to get out of the cage. They're like, yeah, all right, yeah, I guess it's time to go to the cage.
We're just gonna fight. So here we have Anna comes into the cage and beats Mitt up with a tripod while the song Barracuda plays. There's a good line where Mitt says, "I don't fight girls," and she says, "Neither do I." I thought that was really sick, but doesn't really stand up to closer inspection. I don't really know what that means. But they have a nice fight. Anna beats Michael Strahan up, and I thought, like, I don't know, I'm not gonna say it like solved feminism, but like it was nice to see. Casey is looking on in the background, and he calls someone, allegedly the NSA or something, to get background clearance on Anna as a candidate for possible fieldwork. I liked that. Later, Bryce shows up at Chuck's apartment to tell him that Sarah hesitated and almost cost him his life and the microchip. Chuck asks what he's supposed to do, and Bryce says he'll do the right thing, which is why he sent Chuck the Intersect in the first place. Then Bryce just, leaves, which I thought was kind of a dick move. I'm gonna have to make a shameful admission here that I wasn't feeling him as much this episode. I thought he was a little, I don't know, he was coming on a little strong, but, not strong enough. He wasn't as suave.
Mm-hmm.
I think because he's been cuckolded, now I'm just, I lost respect for him, I guess.
Seems like you were adopting the kind of very evolutionary biology mindset of human relationships that is also employed by one Eric Ney Mystery, also known as the pickup artist. We were
talking about him last episode, and now I'm just oh, I didn't even watch any of his videos and all of his viewpoints. I've just absorbed somehow.
The pickup artist,
is his move.
Yeah, the pickup artist would contend that your genetics and your biology is turned off by a man who cannot provide for you.
Yeah, yep, I guess that's true. So sorry, Matt Bomer. Sorry, Bryce.
Ooh, yeah, can't compete with millions of years of evolution.
I guess not. Bryce makes up for his dickish behavior a little bit by giving Chuck his sunglasses. Chuck says he doesn't want to be a real spy, and Bryce says it's a little too late for that. He also tells Chuck that he's been looking out for him all along. Meanwhile, Casey has on his best "I'm not mad, I'm disappointed" dad face, and Sarah expresses to him that she knows she hesitated, based on him not having any reaction and not saying anything and just continuing to be disappointed. Sarah decides to go and have a conversation with Chuck. We don't really know what she was planning to say, but they both start to talk at once, and Chuck ends up talking first. He tells her that she's everything to him, but they can't have a future together because he wants a normal life and she will never be normal. This is clearly not what she was expecting, so again, I'm not really sure if she was going to confess or feel it. I don't know what was going to happen there. But Sarah says that when the intersect is out of Chuck's head and he has that normal life, he'll forget all about her. He says he seriously doubts that. Both of them cry a little bit, and it's very sad. Also, Skinny Love is playing. Good times.
Oh, Skinny Love.
I could have interrupted you and stopped this, but I really like it.
Bon Iver, are you a white guy who is sad and lovelorn? Bon Iver.
So I have a bone to pick with the next scene.
You have a Bon Iver to pick with the next scene?
Yes. Matt Bon Iver?
Oh no! I've been vanquished! No, I'm melting!
So Chris is dead. So Ellie invites Sarah over to talk about bridesmaid stuff, I guess. Chuck is also there, which is fine, but so the thing that Ellie is doing is she's like, Sarah, come look at these dresses that I've picked out, in a catalog. And she's showing them to Devin, which is pretty non-traditional. It's generally you don't show your future husband the dress that you're going to wear until like later. And like, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're just like not going with like traditional gender expectations, but I think it was just like kind of a snafu that they could have just been like dealing with any kind of wedding duty, but instead it was dresses. I don't know. What do you think about this, Chris?
You know what I think, Erin? I think that this is just yet another instance of your weirdly narrow-minded worldview and thinking that men and women need to fall into these conventional, traditional gender roles, and especially with some kind of antiquated ceremony or tradition like marriage. You're like, oh, the man can't see the woman's dress. Like, you know,
I just think it's weird.
Are you the one that causes the Handmaid's Tale? I think so.
It might be.
I think it starts with them being like, hey, who's this Erin Rada girl? And then cut to Handmaid's Tale. And then Yvonne is doing something in there. I'm not sure what she's up to there, but she's doing something.
I don't know. Did she have a baby, or is that in real life? I don't know. Something.
Real life baby. I feel like a baby's also involved in Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some babies.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I didn't realize it was such a faux pas, so it didn't really alarm me.
Yeah, but it was just weird. Like, it's just unusual, and I feel like if it was supposed to be like an atypical couple dynamic, they should have addressed it more. I think it was just that the male writers of the show don't know that that's like not a thing.
Well, a man can look at bridesmaids' dresses, right? That's what they were looking at?
Okay, were they looking at I thought they were looking at wedding dresses.
Oh,
so if
maybe.
it was bridesmaids' dresses, then none of this is all moot. So I'm sorry for my faux pas. But anyway, the episode ends. Chuck goes back into his room later that night and sees that Bryce left him the pair of sunglasses. Chuck puts them on and does a Sean Connery impression in his mirror. Then the glasses say something like ocular identification complete, and the Intersect update gets downloaded into Chuck. He falls over, and we hear him say from the ground, "I hate Bryce Larkin."
Where did Chuck get the photo of him and Sarah on a mountain?
Oh yeah, I was just thinking, like,
Do they hang out when they're not doing spy stuff and take cute pictures, like when they went to Comic-Con?
Do they have lives when we can't see them?
And also, oh my god, the Intersect just got updated.
Yeah, that was. I mean, I guess we'll find out next episode. But like Bryce seems like he's just like causing a ruckus. Like he's just like he don't give a shit.
He's a cheeky little guy.
Yeah. The like Intersect, like the thing exploded. So like that's not going to the government. So like, are they gonna be mad at Bryce? Is that why he's on the run now?
So the next segment is we're a segment that we call Entering the Home Theater Room, where we stop into the, I guess, disgusting and smelly, filthy home theater room of the Bymore, since the jocks were in it, and pop in a video from our own lives and share a little bit about our personal experience as it pertains to something in the episode. This is Chuck versus the breakup, so thinking a lot about different breakups that happened.
Yep.
My particular standout memory for me was in high school, when I had gone on very, very seldom. I think I maybe went on like one double date with this girl who was an upperclassman, and I was like, cool. And then I was trying to finagle just like a one-on-one date because we had only gone on the group date before. Group date. Oh my God.
Having flashbacks?
I'm just thinking about The Bachelor. Just using Bachelor terminology. So I was trying to arrange just like a date between her and I, because it seemed like she was vibing it, and I thought that it would like go well, and that would be something she's interested in. So I was like pitching her ideas on different dates, and she kept shooting them down, and I was like, oh, that's kind of weird, but like, okay. And then she basically settled on going to this restaurant in our town, which I'd never been to, but the seafood restaurant. I do not live in a necessarily coastal town. It's, an hour away from the coast.
I wouldn't call it that.
So I was like, and at the time I didn't really care for seafood, so I was like, all right, I guess, yeah, we can go there, sure, because I didn't care.
Yeah.
So I pick her up at like 5, maybe a little after 5,
time.
And we go to this restaurant in town, and it's just like dingy and bad, and I got shrimp Alfredo, I think, and it was just so gross, and like I had to go to the bathroom, and I just was not feeling well. Yeah. And then I came back out, and we paid, and we finished, and then I was like, oh, it's only like 6 o'clock, so the night is young, like what else do you want to do, where do you want to go next? And she's like, can you just bring me home? And it was like, oh yeah, that's fine, sure. So then we drive 5 minutes to her house, and I'm like, so do you like want to hang out here? And she's like, I'm just gonna go inside.
Oh no,
I don't think we should keep doing this. And I was like, oh, okay. So I drive away and it's like 6:15, and I was like hyping this up to my friends and my family, like, I got a big date tonight.
No.
And I get home at like 6:20 and they're like, oh.
No.
So then
That is too bad.
I went and hung out at the town pond for a little while and just was very dramatically looking over the water.
Did you listen to Bon Iver?
Come on, skinny. No, I should have been listening to The National, because that's what you listen to if you're an angsty white guy that doesn't really,
Is that what they have, like, the Need My Girl song? Is that The National?
No, I am not sure. But in this episode, it was when it was like the interlude that they would play for Sarah and Bryce. We're in a fake empire.
Oh, yeah, that's The National. Also, I Need My Girl is The National.
I need my girl. So that was my favorite breakup.
My favorite breakup. That's a new podcast. I would say, I don't have a ton to choose from because, of course, I'm just never break up with anyone. Erin or Anna.
You're a keeper.
I'm a keeper. But when I was in high school, I had a young gentleman caller who we had been dating not very long. I think we've been dating for maybe a month, and he broke up with me via letter. So he walked me to my bus, because that was this period of my life. He walked me to my bus, which was at the front of the bus line, so he had to walk me pretty far. We just had some normal conversations, and then as I was about to board my bus, he says, "Wait, I have something for you," and he pulls out a note, and then it was a note where he said that he wanted to break up. And then I got on my bus. I figured, like, when he handed me a note, I was like, oh, this is going south real fast. So I got on the bus, and then I waited for him to leave, and then I fist pumped because I was going to break up with him and I didn't want to do it. So I was like, yes. So that's my breakup.
That story took a turn. I didn't know that's how that was going to go.
Yeah, it was a twist ending.
Wow. I thought
he was also very surprised when I told him this later.
How old were you, like in middle school or like early high school?
No, it was like 10th grade, I think.
Oh, okay.
I was 10th grade, he was 9th grade.
Oh, I like how that's the equivalent of like the big dramatic scene at an airport when someone's getting on the plane.
Yeah.
The equivalent for high school is someone walking you to the bus and you're boarding your school bus like you do every afternoon.
Yeah.
Here's this letter. And then I imagine
I wish I still had it. I would like to read it.
I picture you reading the letter, then looking out the bus window or the back of the bus, like the security door, and seeing him walk away and you yelling out like, "You're dead to me, dead to me."
That's what I did.
Breaking up is fun to do. Next, we have a segment called Chuck, Marry, Kill. We talk about one part of the show that we'd like to marry and one part of the show, this episode at least, that we would like to kill.
What should we do first?
Can I start with my kill, perhaps?
Yeah, go ahead.
Not a major one. I thought the actor that they had playing that Fulcrum, like, thug for hire at the train station, I thought he was really bad. He delivered his lines. It was like...
I thought he was very good looking.
You thought he was good looking?
Yeah.
He was not a good actor. Maybe that's how he got his job, because it was like, whoa, that's bad acting. And he only had one line, which is like, "Give us the money." And he just could not sell it. I was like, that guy was bad. That's all I have.
Okay, well, mine is also related to Fulcrum actors and actresses, but specifically what Chuck says about them. As I mentioned before, I did not really like that Chuck called that woman a scary elf maiden. I thought that was uncalled for, and I would also be angry and hold a gun to his head if someone did that to me. It wasn't really funny. Like, I think, though, the point of it was that, like, he insulted her and she heard him. Like, that was the joke. But the joke that he said wasn't very good, and I was more confused about it than anything else, because I was like, wow, like, Chuck, like, why you just calling, like, women ugly? That's not nice. Like, you're not that much of a catch yourself. So.
Whoa.
I'm taking a hard stance here. I mean, like, I like Chuck up until that point. I just think, he needs a lesson from Mystery.
He does not need a lesson from Mystery. Mystery, if you're listening, hey, how's it going?
Thanks for listening to 2 episodes of our show. That's
not
really
one,
nice.
but 2 episodes of Mystery.
Episodes.
Big fan of your work. Think you're a really great public speaker.
What would you marry this episode?
So I have 2 kind of, like, I have a little one and then a larger one.
Yes.
I think I really liked the scene of Anna being a badass with a tripod.
Yeah, that was really good.
In beating up Michael Strahan. Not because I have a vendetta against Michael Strahan, because I do not.
I think you do.
I don't. I don't know why you think I do, but I don't. It kind of explains, it elucidates that Anna's video diary that I saw in the bonus features of season one,
Yes.
where she's doing swords and stuff. So
Yeah.
maybe that was, I don't think that was intentional, but it's cool that that's part of the character, because I feel like
Yeah.
Anna doesn't usually get that much dimension.
Yeah, I did not think they were going to go that way. I thought they were kind of hinting at it, but I didn't think it was actually going to happen. I thought it was going to focus on like Morgan regaining his manhood. So I liked that it was her.
Yeah, I thought it was unexpected, and then I thought it was extra unexpected that Casey was so impressed and was like
Yes.
immediately calling someone, being like,
Oh my God, I
"Hey,
love
we got
that.
we
Yeah.
try to refer her for the
Yeah.
government," which is cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I also, like, on a larger scale, I liked the breakup scene. It was really emotional, and I got choked up while I was watching it.
Oh,
So
okay, that's what, because I was, this is really dumb, but like I knew the episode was called Chuck versus the Breakup, and I was like, well, who broke up? And now I'm thinking, okay, that was
it's
it.
Chuck and Sarah, but it's also
Yeah.
kind of Bryce and Sarah when you think about it.
Yeah, well, I thought about Bryce and Sarah, but Chuck, okay. Yep. Cleared it right up.
Yep. What about you?
So I really like the scene when Bryce and Chuck are getting ready. Bryce has a real bow tie and Chuck has a clip-on bow tie, and like Chuck kind of feels inferior.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it was, well, this is it. It's a very small visual thing that you might miss if you were, say, taking notes or just not paying attention in general. But I noticed it, and I thought it was a really like good visual way of like showing this feeling that Chuck has had, and I really liked it. So I would marry that. I thought it was sweet that Ellie asked Sarah to be her bridesmaid. I thought that was like, although the execution was weird and like everything about it was weird, I thought that was sweet. I like it.
I liked it aside from the fact that I hated it, but I really liked it.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that's Chuck, marry, kill.
So interesting information is dead, as we all know, but I do have some information that happens to be interesting. I wanted to bring to your attention that this episode 3, got 1.4 million more viewers than the last one. I happened to see how many viewers it had, and I thought that was interesting. I don't know why you'd tune in episode 3, but maybe the promotions were interesting, maybe because of Matt Bomer. They got that Bomer spike, you know?
Did you dig into it at all, or no?
No, I just wanted to drop that fact for you.
Great.
Also, this information is a little more interesting. Going back to the name Von Hayes, apparently it's a thing in Chuck where the creators name characters after obscure 80s sports icons. So Von Hayes is a, let's see if it says where he's from. He's a player from Philadelphia who was around in the 80s. And apparently, let's see when this, January 5th, 2009, an article was published by Nerve blog. It says love, sex, and culture, and there's apparently personals on this website. I don't know what this website is, so don't like question me on this, but there's an article where the writer of this article was reflecting that they thought that the characters in Chuck being named after obscure 80s sports icons meant something about the future of the Chuck or the future of Chuck and what the intersect, like how things were going to wrap up. They thought that this was a clue, and they were like having a lot of questions about it, and apparently the creators of Chuck got asked about it a lot, and this co-exec producer Matthew Miller said that there's no master plan and that they just kind of challenge each other to come up with the weirdest and most obscure sports names for villains and minor characters that they can, and it was just a fun game that they all had in writing Chuck.
Well,
So,
it's too bad that we don't have interesting information anymore, so I'm gonna have to cut all of that out. But that was definitely interesting. I wonder about the names of these people. I'm like, how are they coming up with these names? But apparently they made a game out of it.
Yeah,
definitely helpful. Very good to know. So on the Scooter scale, which is the scientific scale for how we rate episodes of Chuck, 0 through 5 corn dogs. What did you rank this episode? How many corn dogs did you give it?
I think I'd give it a 4. I really liked this episode. Although, as I said, Matt Bomer was not as appealing to me as he has been in previous episodes, I did like the dynamic. I did really like I think I read some reviews about these couple episodes that we've watched in the past couple weeks, and people were talking about whether the will they won't they was getting annoying yet, or whether it was used effectively. And I think that, for me personally, it's used very effectively. That we know that Chuck and Sarah have feelings for each other, and like that's exciting, but also like plausible things are getting in the way, plausible feelings are coming up, there's like plausible, I don't know, like barriers to them being together, and it like keeps the emotion heightened where I like feel bad that they broke up, but like I feel happy that like Sarah is starting to like develop feelings for someone. Like I thought that was all good. I liked the mission that they go on. I liked Vaughn all right. So I thought, I'll give it a 4. I thought it was a good episode.
Yeah, I agree. I think I would give it maybe 4.5.
Ooh.
I was probably like around like a 3.54 until the breakup scene, but the breakup scene really was really good. Got me pretty choked up. I don't know what it is about these crazy kids, but they just get to me.
It was good. It was emotional.
Because it's like, I guess it was meaningful, or I don't know. I think it's just interesting because you would think that Sarah has the upper hand, or she traditionally has the upper hand in their relationship in terms of Chuck seeking her out and wanting her approval, or like her, wanting to date him. But with the breakup, it was kind of role reversal, and it was Chuck having the upper hand and not wanting to.
That's a good way of putting that.
Break up with her, and he was clearly upset about it. But it was interesting to have Chuck basically taking the thing that he's wanted this whole time and saying like, I don't want this anymore. Yeah. And it having clearly an emotional effect on Sarah, who we are seeing is opening up and being physically affected by her feelings for Chuck. So
do you think that Chuck is like actually feels that he can't have a normal life with Sarah, and he's like coming to terms with that? Or do you think that he's trying to like not like nag is the wrong word, but do you think he's trying to like break up with her to protect her because he knows that she can't do his job if she has these feelings?
Well, it's hard to say. Maybe it's a little of both. Yeah, I think that he's like legitimately getting kind of tired and frustrated with the spy stuff, and he doesn't want to have the intersect. Definitely. But
yeah, I thought what he said was pretty good. Like when he was talking about how like he might want to call her after a long hard day, and she's like on a mission and stuff. Like I guess I had kind of been thinking of it as, and maybe Chuck was thinking of it as, like they would get together and then they would just like live together and have like a normal-ish life. But that's not what's going to happen unless she like defects or whatever. So yeah.
She could have a normal life. She can open up a Wienerlicious food truck, maybe.
Yeah, she could, or a orange food truck.
Yes. Well, another
one in the books.
Another good episode of Chuck.
Another okay episode of Go Check Yourself.
Yes, another okay episode.
Are you wearing a necklace?
Excuse me?
It looks like you're wearing a necklace.
I'm not wearing a necklace.
I thought you had like a little choker, like a
you
little.
You thought I was wearing a choker? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I thought it was cool.
Maybe I could rock that look.
I think so.
I'm gonna go and start looking up pictures of man necklaces online. So checking out all the internet has to offer for male necklaces. My name is Chris Gillespie, reminding you that food is sexy.
And my name is future President Erin, letting you know, please vote for me in the future elections, unless if you don't want the world to end, then don't do that. And anything is possible. So I'll probably still win.
Anything is possible, just like Erin becoming elected president and then becoming a malicious dictator.
Yep, it's possible. You never know.
Anything's possible. Who knows?
It's possible.
Who knows? All right. I think I'm going to sing us out with some more Bon Iver.
Please do.
All right. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Special thanks to freemusicarchive.org and the artist Hadakoa for providing us with our theme song, Warm Up. Make sure to email us at gocheckyourselfpodcast@gmail.com and tweet at us at gocheckpodcast. Remember to like and subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts and write a review if that's something you need to do. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.